But today, to start with, we're going to review the Duotone Super Hero 2020, which is the wave sail for Duotone. And to help break this one down with me was Nik Baker, who's a distributor in the UK for Fanatic and Duotone. So we filmed this a little bit of a while back, and it is a bit of a long one. So I put down in the description the different time sections, so whether that be the rigging or the history, and you can fast forward to that bit if you're in a rush. But anyway, let's get into it.
Hey,
how are you? Yeah, not bad.
How you doing, guys?
You've been working with the brand over a few years. How do you think the sail has changed over the years? I think it's been a few years it's been running.
Yes, I've been working with Baltimore, which obviously own Duotone and previous sail brands, Fanatic and whatnot for a long time, since 1999. Actually, the first year I came on board, I won the Aloha Classic, and that prototype then in those days was the Dr. X, I think it was. So yeah, things have come a long way since then, but still the same designer, Kai Hoff, with the brand product manager Raul Yoho, who been working together for years and years and years. So they've sort of tried and tested most things. They've had lots of great team riders involved in all sort of processes all the way through. Now, 20 odd years down the road, been as the agent for Baltimore in the UK. We're still, involved in certain areas. Nowhere near as much, obviously, with actually developing, going on the water and testing the product. We give our feedback to Raul, that goes to Kai and to the other team riders of areas we may have a problem with, conditions that we may use in a location like the South Coast or all around the UK, as other nations will do the same. They then apply that, including the magazine tests from around the world, and they apply that to their sort of next round of development. And I'd say the Super Hero, to be honest, the last couple of years has been pretty special. We know Victor's won the world title on it a few times, and we know as a general, one sail pretty much does it all in all conditions, and that's difficult to do with the type of boards now, 3 fins, 4 fins. Some people still sort of using single fins, but largely multi-fin boards and different style of multi-fin boards. So there's a lot one sail range has to do and has to cope with.
I've been lucky enough to go to a few places like Pozo last summer, where I was on 3.0, the 3.0 version of the sail, and the same again, like in light wind conditions. And for me, it's worked really well in everything. And yeah, for one sail, I know a few years ago that you had like a few different sails. We had the ice, ID or something, I can remember. So there was a lot, and now it's all into one.
Onshore condition type sail, power wave sails, down the line wave sails, and then it went to 3 batten wave sails and 5 batten. There's lots of different variations. At Duotone, in the last probably 7, 8, 10 years, as a brand, as a company, Baltimore actually have really tried to reduce the amount of products we have. Not just for myself or for yourself or the pro riders, it's actually least for those guys, for the end consumers, so they can not have 15 different lines to choose from. They want 1 or 2.
And over the years, they've managed to come every year, they sort of refine it a little bit, don't they? And they've come up with this. And I guess there's a few key features in the sail which make it possible for it to be used in lots of different conditions. So I think we'll have a look at that and what makes it different from some other sail brands. The main thing that I see compared to a lot of sails is the space between the first batten and the second batten.
Yeah, it is. Basically, it's reasonably simple to understand. Obviously, the bigger the gap, as you see other brands now following suit. The reason for that is it allows the sail to fill out earlier in the wind range. What I mean by that is, so we have a 4.7 here, rather than having a wind of sort of 15 to 22 knots, let's say, that sail's going to actually fill out, and you can use the power of that sail in less wind. Because you've got 4 batten sails with a smaller gap, or even a 5 batten sail. Quite often, unless you let the outhaul way off, which bags that sail out, you end up needing quite a lot of wind to actually bend the mast and actually fill that balloon, that sail out, if you like. So once it's actually then, the mast is fully bent, that sail's fully sort of opened and expanded, then that will create all the power. But until it gets to that point, you haven't got all the power. In the light winds, obviously, you want that to get to that point or reach that part earlier in less wind than the next sail. That means you've got more power in the bottom end. That's one thing, which I think we've had now for 5 or 6 years. The tricky bit to that is then being able to hang on to that sail in Gran Canaria, or
Yeah.
when you're on your 4.7 and you're actually 5 knots, 10 knots, too much wind, because you're still out. You don't want to have to come in and re-rig another sail every 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You want that sail to have a wide, really wide wind range. So that sort of side of it actually wasn't so difficult, I don't think, to achieve. The difficult bit was actually using that light wind power and then being able to use that without having to re-rig the sail radically. We put Outhaul on, is sort of the thing we play with, I think, mostly, but without radically retuning your product, your sail, and be able to use it in the wind. Because a lot of people, light wind sailing, like we were saying, in Gwydion type conditions, you're drifting out, you're pumping, you want that sail to get that power really early, get yourself out the back so you can catch the waves to ride in.
Yeah.
Where I live in sort of Shoreham at the beach here, when it's cranking, 35 knots, on the inside we've got current, we've got shore break. I still need that power to punch me out and get me through it and to get jumping. But then when I'm on the wave and I'm actually out the back now and it's 5 knots wind than what it is on the inside, I need to be able to hang on to that sail. I don't want to change sails rigging when I'm on the outside. I want it to be, have a universal sort of setting, if you like. So that's a tricky bit.
I think that's a good point. I mean, with these sails, I've experienced it a lot. I think this year in Tyre we had a super windy day, and I think we started off on 4.2s, everyone, and it got windier and windier and windier, and everyone was changing it out. I was like, I'm powered up, but I can still hang on to it, while they were just blown out the water. So that's something that's really impressed me, that the fact that you've got all this power and because of this, but yeah, you got the whole wind range, and I guess that's due to you got a few features, the radial low strikes and the mini battens.
Yeah, we've got the low strips that come from the clues. You can see that are sort of hidden under the graphics here. That allows the sail to sort of flex and fold across those low strips. Those low strips keep it sort of tight through the tension part of the sail, which is attack the clue, and sort of 2/3 of the way up the mast. That's where all the sort of power is sort of centered, where your hands can control it. Over the top of those low strips is effectively largely releasing and exhausting the wind. That's giving you forward drive. At the same time, when you're pumping, you want to use all of the sail, so you don't want the leech to be too loose. In the last few years, Kai's worked really hard to tighten the leeches up without losing that top end. We don't want them to flutter, obviously, sort of more thing of the old, but we certainly want a little bit of loose leech, but not too much, so that you can use more of the sail. Effectively, in some ways, been able to use a smaller sail than we used to have to use, which then also gives us the power in the bottom end, but also gives us the control in the top end.
He's a heavier rider, I'm a lighter rider, and I think that shows on the World Cup team as well. There's a lot of different weights, and I think we can safely say that this sail you can use if you're a heavier rider or a lighter rider. For both people, it works really, really good. And I know I've heard from a few people that over the few years, I think they have improved for heavier riders. I don't know if you can say the same for yourself.
Well, definitely. I mean, unfortunately, I used to be 80 kilos. I'm now 90 kilos, sit behind the desk far too much. But at 90, 92 kilos even, and that's without my wetsuit on and harness. Yeah, I mean, I'm still using reasonably small boards. I go on an 86, in sort of on my 5.0, no problem. I like to get on, not a tiny board, but I like to get on a slightly, so I don't want to be on a 100-litre board, that's for sure, which a lot of guys at 90, mid 90 kilos are on 100-litre sort of wave boards. I like that sort of little small, more compact. With the little waves we have, I find they just sort of fit in a pocket a little bit better. So yeah, my weight at that sort of low 90s, I can have slightly less outhaul than you would probably have. I personally like quite a lot of downhaul. I like that free feeling. I like the front of my board to have a little bit of a free feel, which for me makes the board feel looser. On the bigger waves, you don't need that so much, but the smaller sort of European mushy waves that we have, certainly on the south coast of England, I like that looser sort of feeling that we have. Sure. But yeah, for me, we've had the power for a while. The mast always felt a little soft in the past. And now we've got that sort of support for the mast. So when you're pumping it as a heavier guy, we've got team riders, opinion leaders of ours that are over 100 kilos or way over 100 kilos, and they're absolutely loving them. And now we've got that support. So when you're pumping, if the mast or the sail design around the mast that makes it feel too soft, as you pump, there's no sort of pull, there's no drive, there's no power to actually drive you forwards. Having power on the beach is one thing, getting on the water and you pumping, and that drive's got to push you forwards rather than sideways. So yeah, that's really important as a heavier guy.
Okay, well, I think that's a pretty good overview on the sail. Now we want to show you basically how you'd get it in the package and how easy it is to rig it up and get out on the water on it.
Okay guys, so we've got the 4.7 Super Hero here. We're going to show you basically how quick and simple it is to rig up, because a large part of what we've done at Duotone over the years is trying to simplify all of the rigging situations. So obviously mast, boom, how you downhaul the sail, obviously the way the extension works for the downhaul, just to make things as simple, quick and easy for you guys to get out on the water and enjoy yourself with a, you know, a pretty much perfectly rigged sail straight away. There we go. At Duotone, we've tried really hard to give you all the sort of tools, if you like, to make it as simple as possible. But you guys at home obviously still have to, you know, apply that and tune it and rig it to the sort of settings and guidelines that we've given you.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So I guess the first thing we're looking at is the downhaul.
The downhaul. To be honest with you, I can walk up and down the beaches on a windy day, and it's really frustrating. I see so many sails that are just not enough downhaul. And then you get the occasional one that's gotten really carried away when he's overpaddled and downhauled it, you know, about 4 foot too far, which just, you know, makes it even worse. But still, yeah, downhaul to me is probably the single trickiest thing. And the one question I get so many times from people, but isn't that for the pros? Isn't that for when you're really good, when you downhaul it that much? Not at all. The pros don't need dots on their sails. Yeah, you know, generally they know how. They've got to feel, they'll come in, they'll re-rig it. The guys at the end that are buying the products, going on the water for fun, they're the one generally that needs, you know, the most support and the most sort of help with the general basic setting. Okay. If you look at the downhaul, where the dots are in between the top batten and the one down, the more downhaul I put on, the looser that material becomes. You see that's gone past the VTS, really loose. For myself, certainly, I will always have it, even in light winds, at least on the maximum VTS, so the one closest to the mast. As you can see, with the loose, solidly loose material. If it's really windy and I want my board to feel a little bit looser, I may add one click, literally one click, that's it.
So just to get that straight, Nick, so you used the furthest one towards the mast.
The one closest to the mast, the max VTS, I use at least that, even in light winds, even with my weight. Okay. Even if I'm a little bit light, if you loosen it too much, I find it holds the board. These short rocker, the boards are really short now. So the forward sort of nose entry rocker is pushing in the water if the sail is too full or too restricted in the top of the sail. I also find by having that max VTS or even one click or two clicks past it, I find it loosens the front of my board up. And then the sort of onshore, mushy, smaller, not very powerful waves, I have to sort of make the board do what I want it to do, make it feel loose. And I like that sort of looser feeling board. Sure, okay.
So the minimum one there, would you ever use? I know some riders like to use it and some don't.
Some of the guys on the down the line riding a little bit, they have more outhaul. Yeah, and then they have a little bit less outhaul. They like that pulley feeling in the top that holds the rowel of the board in the water. So when you're on a bigger wave, maybe with a little bit of chop as well, by having a slightly fuller head at the top, it'll actually hold the rowel when you're leaning the sail forward, driving through the rowel on a rowel turn. That will hold that rowel in the water a little bit more. Okay. For the sort of riding I'm doing, unfortunately these days, I'm not out in those really big sort of waves so often. Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's normally shoulder to head high generally when I'm sailing. Okay.
Does it depend on your weight at all, do you think?
I don't think so. I really don't. Okay. If you're light, you certainly don't want it full in the top. Even if you're heavy, and I'm reasonably heavy, and the guys I know that are 5-10 kilos heavier than me will pretty much still do the same. If you want some more power, you work it with the outhaul.
So I think, well, what I do and I think what you do and a lot of people do is do the downhaul, and that's pretty much fixed for the session. And then that's when you go towards the outhaul. Yeah. If the wind drops a bit, you tweak it a bit, but you very rarely use a downhaul, even if it's very windy.
Set, and once you learn, and like I say, for myself, I'm one click past max generally. Yeah. My boom height on our sails, we have the the little marks and the boom cutaway. Mine goes one notch above large on every sail. That's the same, that never changes. So largely on the water, all I change is the outhaul. Yeah, unless the conditions radically change, but generally that's pretty much what it is.
So basically, top tip for you guys is once you get that downhaul on, find the right spot for you, generally towards the end of that VTS, towards the mast, and basically stick with it.
Pretty much so.
Okay, perfect. Okay, Nick, we've looked at the downhaul. Next thing is the outhaul.
Yep, so downhaul set, Your boom position is placed where you normally have it. For me, it's 1 notch above large.
Yeah.
Then it comes to the Outhaul. For us on the Duotone, we have the Outhaul numbers written right here. You can see. So I'm basically up above medium, so I'm close to XL. So I've got it set between 161 and 163. I've actually got it set on 164, so there's about a centimetre gap there, as you see. And I've got that pulled right out for my sort of full power condition setting.
Okay.
One thing you have to remember, I have found personally with the 2020 Super Heroes compared to 2019, you have to rig them visually flatter on the beach. When that mast bends, which we can show you in a second how it works, when the mast bends, that sail fills out even more so than it did last year. So one mistake I've occasionally made, I can do the downhaul, we have the VTS, it's really simple. You know, that's all set. I rig it up, I look at it, go, yep, that looks pretty good. Jump in the water, really powered up and gone, oh damn, I need a bit more outhaul. So I'm always end up putting a little bit more outhaul on compared to what I got used to from last year's sails. I've now got sort of used to it, but something, don't be afraid. They look reasonably flat on the land. As soon as that mast bends, that sail fills up all the way through the body. That power comes in, and all of a sudden you've got loads of power there. So it allows you to have a little bit more outhaul, which also gives you more stability through those tension strips, those load strips. Allows you to have a bit more of a neutral feeling sail when you sheet out. Also, when the guys are doing their, you know, radical double loops and all these tricky rad jumps that's going on these days, it gives them that little bit more positive feeling in your backhand and more control.
So I think on the water, I've noticed, and other people have asked me, like, should the sail touch the boom? Is that a good thing or a bad thing on these sails?
I don't think on any sail it's a particularly good thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got a fuller sail or you're a really heavy guy and you've bagged it out and it's really light and you want more power, sometimes obviously it's going to touch the boom. The way the booms are designed, developed now, they are getting narrow at the front end,
yeah,
which is actually why we have a wider back end now.
Yeah. So
obviously with the little narrow back ends like we had 4 or 5 years ago, that sail will touch it even more.
Yeah.
The reason we don't want it to touch at the back of the sail is as soon as that touches and pushes over the boom, that actually pushes the draft up and out the back. So on this sail, for instance, about and above the boom, that's going to start blowing out. The mid-leach, we call it, is going to start blowing out. That the control's gone up and out the back. All of a sudden, you feel really backhandy.
Okay.
So a real, in a way, a fairly simple way to know that if you've got enough outhaul or not is if you really feel backhandy, yeah, and your harness lines are in the right place, then you know you haven't got enough outhaul.
Okay.
That's
probably
a fairly
you,
okay to understand. The whole checking your sail by pushing your sail, you know, at the back onto the boom.
Yeah.
I don't know who came up with that. Personally, I think that makes no sense whatsoever.
Okay.
Because every boom's a bit different. You know, the way the sail feels right at the back here,
yeah,
got nothing
and
to
then
do.
the newer the sail, it's different to.
It's got nothing to do with what's going on in the front of the sail as well. So I personally don't get that. You know,
okay,
we've got our numbers. We can see what the sail's doing. We can certainly feel what the sail's doing on the water.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so your sort of tip there is if you're on the water, you've got the harness lines in the right place, and you're feeling a bit backhanded, you probably don't have quite enough on.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So one of the last things to do, once you've done your downhaul, your outhaul, your boom heights, positions okay, is your harness lines. And I know early on when you get a new sail range, sometimes that's moved around a bit, you don't quite know. So before you jump in the water, I literally use our HTS system, harness line trim system, which as you can see is right here. And basically that's roughly in the middle of your harness lines. Gives you a pretty good base setting to start with when you go on the water. So with all these settings, downhaul, outhaul, harness lines, your boom height, your mast track position, your fin positions, your foot strap positions, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of different things to work on, to play with. So for us, you know, at Baltimore, Fanatic and Duotone, we work really hard to sort these products out. So largely everything you can put together, have a look at it fairly quickly, and you go on the water and you're going to have a pretty damn good time. It's going to be generally set pretty well. Everyone's going to have their own personal touch. You might want slightly more or less down, or a little bit more or less out. Your harness lines may want to go slightly further forward. I have mine a little bit further back. I like, you know, I don't want to sheet in my backhand. I want to be sheeted in. I want to be going full power, full speed all the time. That's just how I like it. Mast track positions, all these different things. So all the numbers and the dots and whatnot, that's an amazing start. From that, you can then slightly tweak it with a, you know, Power XT extension and your outhaul and your bits and bobs. Go ahead and make it absolutely amazing for you. So for me, Super Hero, what's the difference between the Super Hero and our other duotone wave sail, which is a Super Session? Personally, the Super Session is more of a bump and jump directed sail, works amazingly on a free wave, 5 battens. As a general overview, to keep it simple, one of the biggest differences is the draft position. On the Super Hero, it's really low down and it's reasonably far back, so it's right between both hands. The idea behind that is, if you look at that position when you're standing on a board, it runs down your body, from your hands, through your feet, into the board, and roughly where the fins are. With the multi-fin boards, everything's geared to turning and rotating and pivoting and driving around your feet and the fins. The older days, when it was all single fins, it was more off the rail, lean forwards, so a higher, more forward draft point, which is actually what the Super Session is slightly higher, slightly further forwards, for our single and multi-fin free wave type boards, guys that are blasting backwards and forwards, a little bit lighter on your backhand, maybe a little less effort to use, but not as direct for wave riding. You can't pull on your backhand, drive through the turns like you can on the Super Hero. You're blasting backwards and forwards, few jumps, a bit of backside, a little bit of frontside wave riding. The Super Session is amazing. As soon as you're going full on wave sailing, you cannot beat the Super Hero. So the draft point for the Super Hero, as you can see, that's where your hands are. That's sort of draft points roughly around about here. So basically in between your hands. Okay. Super Session, you're looking higher up and slightly further forward. So, roughly around this sort of area.
So another thing that some of you guys might be thinking right now is, oh, I've only got like a 60% mast or 90% mast. We've got the full carbon mast here. So if you've got a lower percentage mast, is that going to affect how much downhaul you put in it?
Not really. The actual setting's generally the same. I mean, if you use a duotone mast, which personally I would recommend whatever sail brand you have, you genuinely would use their mast.
Exactly.
It's designed around that mast. That will give you the best performance on that product. So for us, obviously here being a duotone, you'd grab one of our duotone masts, whether it's one of our silver at 70% or 90% gold. The difference is the rigging will generally be the same. The main difference is it will just feel a little bit heavier. Okay. Obviously the lower carbon content, the sail's going to start to feel a little bit heavier, and most importantly for me actually is the reaction time. Okay. When you pump on a 70% carbon mast, it's just a bit slower coming back towards you, so that feel that you have in your hand, that direct feel between your hand and the power and the control, diminishes slightly as the carbon content goes down. Okay. A little bit like with a boom. Again, here we have one of our Platinum Series wave booms, which is obviously super light, super stiff, and it's incredible the difference it makes, that connection that you have between the sail, the mast, your board, everything, with your boom. Your hands are obviously connected to that boom the whole, or generally connected to that boom the whole time till you're swimming. But you go to a lesser performing boom, an aluminium boom, then they are slightly spongier, slightly less direct feeling. They also, as you get more and more overpowered, they will slightly balloon out, which actually makes a sail now as if you're releasing the outhaul. Okay. So it fills the sail up just slightly, and that will also give you a little bit more handling problems.
If you've got a mast and a boom which isn't 100% carbon, then the rig in it is basically how we did it.
The rig in it's pretty much the same. It's just the feel and the response that you're going to get out of the product. It's not going to be quite as sharp.
Cool. Perfect. We looked at the main features and the rigging tips. There's also a few other cool features that this sail has.
Yeah, it has lots of different features. Obviously, we've gone over how to rig it, tune it, and sort of work it for yourself. Lots of other different things. One of them being the iRocket tensioners. Super lightweight, tiny little things inside the batten pockets here. They come from the factory pre-tensioned, so you don't have to touch them, don't have to mess with them. If for some reason at some point you do need to, obviously you can sort of break the seal and they will obviously do up or undo, but generally you don't need to touch them. That's one obviously pretty cool. That obviously houses the unbreakable epoxy battens, which is another pretty cool feature for wave sail. They're often the things that go. The sail itself is 80% X-ply, as you can see. Only the main window area is monofilm. Makes the sail, really robust. The guys at Duotone tried to do that with all the products, make it as light as possible. Obviously, as high performing as possible, but also great value for money. Something that's going to last. We believe, we trust, and have faith in our product. So that with the sails, for instance, that we have a 2+3 year warranty. If you register it online, you get the full 5 years.
Pretty cool.
Absolutely amazing. I think probably one of the only sail brands, if not the only sail brand that does that. On the Mast, most of our masts have a 2-year unconditional warranty. Majority of our booms also have a 2-year unconditional oil, which again is a pretty much is quite a statement, I would say, from a brand like Duotone. They believe in it. These products, they're not cheap. People invest into the brand, so we want to give them that sort of insurance and confidence to continue to do that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, I've been lucky enough to use these sails over a few years, and I'm using there's a couple different directions now. I'm using the one where you got X-ply in the middle, and you've also got the membrane sail, which is pretty cool. So I'm sure there's a lot of videos out there which you're going to see about that. And yeah, overall, pretty amazing sail. The guys I know have worked really hard over the years, and I'm sure they'll get better bit by bit. And this one's really, really good.
I do wonder sometimes how they're going to improve it for next year, but they generally managed to. Amazing.
Yeah, no, really, really good. So I hope you've enjoyed finding out all this stuff. I know all this techie stuff from Nik I've been learning as well, so hope you've been enjoying it, and hopefully I'll do some other product videos for you guys. If you've got any ideas, please let me know. Message me or comment down below. If you haven't seen my other videos, then I've got a Between the Line series looking at Tyree and Cornwall. That's down there. And if you want to subscribe to the channel if you're new, then click right here in the middle.